what controls the quality of conversations is the quality of questions, right? So when I think about relationships that are on this trajectory that it feels like they're going in the right direction, and ones that don't, you can almost just look at as a microcosm, how are the conversations going? What conversations are missing?
Hello, and welcome back to the Amazing Marketing Show, where we find marketing discoveries through meaningful conversations. And today we have yet another amazing guest for you and another amazing episode. But first, let me introduce my friend, my co-host, Chris Gray. Chris, what's going on?
Dimitri, what up?
Living the dream and excited about our new guest. Give us the intro. Who do we have?
Man, you know how I do this. I don't get any kind of formal, give me your bio, this, that, or the other. I'm giving you the real deal. My man, Seth, like many of the great men I know, I have no real true clue what Seth does. I know he's in real estate, and I know he is super successful at it. But beyond that and all the other things, I don't know. This is what I do know about Seth. We were at a Front Row Dads retreat when I met him. We've talked about Front Row Dads before. Shout out to Front Row Dads. And there is something, I don't care how woo it sounds, there is something about energy and people you gravitate to, right? If somebody comes in the room and they're pissed, you can feel that energy. There is something to energy. I was in that room. We had some kind of thing where we had to break out and go match up with somebody and break out. Seth stands up and points at me, and I was all about it because I was already feeling this dude. And when we go for our walk and we get to talking, it was evident why I was feeling this dude's energy. Seth is an intentional husband, intentional father, intentional businessman, but he is full of wisdom, an easy dude to be around, somebody where I know, and I have done this before, when I need some help with something, I go to him for advice. I am so damn happy to have you on this show, Seth. And like I was telling both you guys before we got into this, I love both of y'all's energy. So I'm excited to see how this conversation goes. Welcome to the show, Seth Dailey.
Thank you guys. Thanks for having me. I'm just excited to spend the next little bit with you and see where it goes.
Well, we're excited to have you on, Seth. And like Chris mentioned, we usually don't know what people do. And isn't that true of anybody in real estate? I mean, what do they actually do?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think you're even describing something there that's a little bit different. We've all heard the phrase be, do, have, right? They're like three levels of sort of consciousness, right? Like we all know people, we're like, oh, I know how much money they have, or I know how many cars they have, or houses, or kids, or whatever. And then we know people and what they do. And then there's some relationships we all get in and we're like, I don't know much about what they do, and I don't know a ton about what they have. But their energy, right? Like these are my people. And I think those feel like the most authentic types of relationships inside a business, outside of business. It's like at the level of being. So I'm happy to answer any of those questions. You tell me what you want to know.
Yeah, well, we subscribe to the whole energy thing in a big way. And when Chris says that you guys align in energy, that's a big deal. So I'm looking forward to hearing what he has to say more about that as we get into this podcast.
Yeah. I will say, just for a little bit of background on a practical level, I've spent about the last 25 years in sort of entrepreneurial world, specifically in real estate. I mean, real estate agents is sort of where we cut our teeth. I mean, gosh, going back 20 years now. And that is just a small microcosm of entrepreneurship. Was in that industry with my wife. So there's a small microcosm of like working in a husband and wife business and then starting to build a team. And now what it looks like today, we've got a brokerage and we still sell. We've got just sort of ancillary, it's kind of this spider web that took off from there in different aspects. Some that make great money, some that have very low noise, some that are, high noise and make very little money, right? All the gamut.
Well, we look forward to hearing about that. And we like to know about leadership, and especially when it comes to couples working in businesses together, that's a big deal. We are in Front Row Dads, and we're trying to be intentional with our time and with our spouses, with our children, and so on. But first, we want to we want to go into the segment where we hear all about how you got beat up, because, it's not always wins. There's also sometimes getting beat up. And so the segment is called The Man in the Arena. It's not the critic who counts, but the man in the arena, striving valiantly, daring greatly, and even in failure, rising above those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. So after that inspirational quote, I think we can all jump into the ring. I'll share first that this past couple weeks have been particularly difficult, both from a personal and business perspective. Personally, I had an immediate family member who suffered a major stroke, and there was a difficult time at going to the hospital, figuring out what to do next, and so on. I think anybody who's ever had a family member suffer a traumatic experience like that knows what it's like. So at the same time, there's a business situation, and usually life happens this way. I mean, you guys could probably relate to this, where our biggest and most important business relationship almost came to a point where it was about to be a time to part ways, but we were able to salvage it. But there were some team members that had to go as a result of it, off of that project. And fortunately, and maybe in some cases unfortunately, because you guys probably have read the book The E-Myth, where when you're and that task and skill that you're being hired for, your business is being hired for, it's hard to scale. But in this case, at least I'm able to step into that role again due to my experience in Google Ads marketing, YouTube Ads marketing, Facebook marketing, and actually fulfill that. And you know what? I will tell you this. I'm so grateful for it. I'm thankful for it, because in good times, but especially in bad times, the work is a grounding force that I really appreciate. And I do feel like the man in the arena today, both from a business and personal perspective.
So if I can jump in after that, if that's all right. You mentioned the man in the arena. One, I haven't heard that quote in a while, right? So thanks for the refresher, guys. And I realized like how many times we think about the opponent in the arena, and we're quick to pick one of them, right? And usually the opponent is somebody else. And for me, the darkest moments have been when like I look at that opponent, I'm like, oh my God, that's me in the mirror. Like that's so. I heard Jesse Elder speak recently, and he talked about this idea that sometimes life happens. Frameworks or frames of mind that we could have. That is life happening to you? Is life happening to me? Is life happening for me? And then he goes, try this one on. Is life happening by me? Like, is everything that's happening because of me? Not in this like egotistical, like I control the universe, but like, oh my gosh, if it's happening, I'm responsible. I had one of those conversations. We could go current or we could go back years, but like, I'll tell you about the conversation I had today with a couple team members, and here's their comment. As much as you guys make nice comments about, oh, your energy is great, they're like, Seth, your energy sucks. You're being a jerk. And
is that an everyday thing? Like, what are we talking about?
And my first conversation was like trying to defend, and like they don't understand the stress I'm under, and they're misinterpreting things. And the only kind of person who tells somebody that their energy sucks, that's somebody whose energy sucks, right? So it's like this, you get into this spiral of defensiveness. I felt all those, and at my best moment in the conversation, not every moment, but at my best moment of the conversation was like, you're right. My energy sucks. I'm tanked right now. I'm dysregulated. I'm going to go spend some time with myself figuring out why, right? But I'm not trying to make you wrong for it. And I can't just, I wish I could tell you I could just flip the switch. I can't, but I acknowledge what you're saying, and I'm going to go spend some time with myself and pay attention to it. And sometimes that's the best we've got. I wrote down when you were talking earlier, you said all these nice things, Chris, and I just wrote down on my best days, right? Because one, we all have crappy days, and we all have days that we're proud of. Hopefully, we have more days that we're proud of as time goes on. But I'm like, man, on my best days, I'm all the things you said, and that's not every day. But man, I want to live more of those days.
I think we're only, I don't know how, we're not very long into this podcast already, Seth, and you've dropped like two or three things that have stood out to me, and I just love that frame of on my best days. Dimitri and I talk about this often, how good it is to be humbled, and how to
You
go ahead.
talk about it more so. I haven't evolved to that level quite yet.
But that's just a good grounding statement and a reminder, especially when people are reminding you of your best qualities and you are cognizant of your best qualities. But to your point, Seth, do we always walk in that? No. Would we like to? Yes, but we don't. So I love that.
Love that. Love it.
When Seth, you mentioned the man in the mirror, and all of a sudden I hear Michael Jackson in my ear,
Yep.
and
I know,
I'm
right?
picturing that, right? And I'm picturing that opponent. Is that opponent actually somebody else, or is it that part inside of us that we're still trying to mold into a better man?
Yeah, and it's even that whole idea of like, who do we compare ourselves to, right? Like um, I'm trying to release as much judgment in my life right now as I can, and I realize like sometimes I'll look at maybe, I mean, at the beginning of this call, I'm like, guys, there's an area that you excel in, and I'm like, I don't even think I could, I wouldn't have anything intelligent to say on that, and so that there's comparison to others. I don't know that that's right or wrong, but certainly notice what's it like to compare ourselves to the version that we want to be in the future or the version that we were in the past. Um, I'm usually at my strongest when I will have gratitude for how far I've come,
Mm-hmm.
right? And use that as then the fuel to to see the next peak of where it's possible to go. I mean, I probably just stole all of that idea from The Gap in the Gain from Ben Hardy, right?
Well, it's a
Live it and
great
breathe it.
place to steal from. And I mean, it's like Dan Sullivan's books too. It's like I feel like I'm stealing everything that I've ever
Yeah,
read from him.
he's so
Um,
good.
but let's talk about the gratitude in the journey. Let's talk about your
Mm-hmm.
journey as far as some of our mutual friends now. I mean, you're kind of a celebrity in your industry. You're running a webinar, and yeah, some people that I know are on it, and it's Seth Dailey, and so like let's talk about the journey. Where did you start? And where are you now? And give us the in between.
Hmm. Okay. So, well, one, I met my wife back in college. So we got married. We got married pretty young. We thought we were going into a world of full time ministry, right? So we met at a Christian college. I've got an undergrad degree in philosophy and a master's degree in theology. So let's start right there.
Wow.
Then I start taking some accounting courses because I read Rich Dad Poor Dad. Next thing you know, I sit for the CPA exam, and I've got my CPA, and I'm working in business. And that's about the season that I realized like we're really wired to add value in almost any environment, but the value is always so kind of at this soul level, right? So fast forward a few years, we find ourselves in real estate. Some people get into real estate because they love houses or they got a background in construction or anything else. When we sort of, sometimes you can only connect the breadcrumbs after, right? It's looking back on the trail and be like, oh, this is how it all connected. What we realized is real estate was an awesome way for us to talk to individuals, help them to get clear on their goals and clear on their strategies. And when we could do it in an area that we knew that if they nailed this decision, it would have a really, really uh, extravagant impact in the rest of their life, right? Like you get home right, you make some really big impacts in other areas. And so, I mean, I've even as we're recording this podcast right now, I've got a couple of families that are settling on houses today. This is a game changing moment for them, right? For me, it's another transaction. It's it's a Friday, and for them, it's like this is going to set up their family for memories for years to come. Maybe they'll turn into an investment property. So it just became an ecosystem of like helping people inside of real estate. It was like, we get to help people make one of the biggest life decisions they've ever made. And my wife and I fell in love with doing that in a way together, because what we noticed is that if we're working with one person, it might be kind of simple. But anytime you had two people making a decision together, exponential amounts of conflict, right?
Hmm.
Like I mean, just we'd literally be talking to a couple and be like, tell us what you want in a house. Somebody would say one thing, somebody else would say something else, and it's like, are y'all buying the same house? Right? Like we got to find a way through this. So one thing leads to another, and we start helping clients, and then we build a team, and then we built a brokerage. And as we talk now, I mean, I live in Austin, Texas. We've got a brokerage with a couple hundred agents in Maryland. We help clients in Austin and help clients in Maryland. And what we're really passionate about at this stage, right, once we started to build a brokerage, is holy cow, if we thought there was a passion about helping people make a good decision about buying a home, what weight there is in helping small business owners work well together. And so being able to help um, couples that are partners in life and in business work even better together, it's like um, ultimately I'm probably just trying to heal the childhood wound that I have, like the trauma of watching my parents try to work together and it not go well, right? It ended in divorce and it ended in foreclosure and bankruptcy. Like it didn't end well. And I'm probably trying to create the community that I wish would have found my parents, back in the day.
So many places to go with that. There's so many places. The thing I wrote down um, was, Seth, when you were talking about your passion behind what you do, it became very evident that you just really care. You care about your product. You care about the work you do. I was talking to Marty Saul. She's on my team. I was talking to her yesterday, and I was giving her a compliment on her work, and I said that your work is like home cooking, like it's home cooking versus restaurant, right? The cliche of
Mhm.
somebody putting their love and time and good ingredients into what they do, and you can taste the quality. It's very evident versus somebody who just shows up to work, clocks in, clocks out, right? There's a difference in the quality of work. And so for you to get where you're at, to have the team you have, to have the name you have and have the reputation you have and the success and all that stuff, what's behind that is your passion for what you do, the ingredients you put into what you do. So tell me more about that. Where did that passion come from to create such a good product?
Yeah, I will, but what I realize is how much I'm like counter. I'm like, nah, I'm gonna be a contrarian on that. Um, so let me tell you about this scary moment. So I have had much passion over the past 20 years about what I do. And Alice and I, my wife, we have had passion together about what we do. And I think that anybody who has passion about what they do, maybe you keep doing it for life. And if you do, my hat's off to you. Like you're amazing. For me, the scariest moments are the moments where somebody loses sight of the passion about what they do and they actually have to find a way to reinvent it. And that was a part of our journey, right? So all of a sudden, there's a passion for a doing, right? Remember our very first conversation, be, do, have. When the passion is at the level of doing, like I love selling houses, I love helping people buy and sell homes. What do you do with the feeling when all of a sudden you're like, that's not lighting me up in the same way? And so I kind of have to chunk that up. It's like, kind of float above that to see like, well, what's the big picture? What is that just a subset of? And that's why I kind of shared with you, like it's a subset of like helping people make decisions together, right? Like I realize if I float all the way up, I'm passionate about helping people buy and sell homes, but I'm really passionate because I'm a teacher. And I want to teach on a something that I think will actually help them have a better life, not just like honestly, um, I'm mediocre when it comes to investment properties, right? From a passion level. And Chris, you and I have talked about investment properties, right? I love helping people build wealth, but what I'm far more passionate about is helping uh, two people make wealth building decisions together. I actually care more about watching the interaction than just saying, hey, let's talk about multifamily, which is a different animal. Now, at the end of the day, here's where my passion came in when it came to real estate, and where it still is. The tagline I use inside of our business is helping people move with confidence. And when I talk to our team about, if we want to help people make a move that they are confident about, everything that we deliver has to build on that confidence. Like, why can there not be typos in a flyer? We lose confidence. Why do contracts have to be bulletproof? It impairs confidence. Like, everything's centered around, if we want this family to be able to make a move that they will sleep well at night, they need to know that they've got this like bulletproof contract and a strong negotiator at their back and amazing marketing, and that we know our numbers and that we know our stats and we know everything about the technical details, in the same way that any one of us would want a surgeon that was confident in his craft, right? And at the end of the day, the reason that I want to be confident in the craft is to instill that confidence in our clients. I don't know if that helps.
It does. And I have one more thing to add. I'm not sure if it's agreeing or disagreeing, but it's adding to it. Okay. So then you talked about be, do, have, with be being the best, right? And so when you were saying there's times where you lost the passion of doing, and you were like, okay, I had to get that confidence. But I think, Seth, when I'm with you, you are good at being.
Mm-hmm.
You are just fucking present. So to me, for you in those times, and I don't know, I didn't walk your life, I don't walk your path, I have no freaking clue. But the times where you lost your passion to do, Seth is good at being. So if you didn't want to do the real estate, you still will accept the fact that it has to get done, and it has to get done at a high level. That's being, is accepting the situation for it is, and then executing it regardless. I think you're just good at being in general, in my opinion.
I think it's almost like when we start to reduce almost any industry, and maybe every industry, I don't know, but I certainly think the service-based industries that I've been in, or the consulting-based or advice-based, like, these become businesses that get just down to the core of what it is like being with one human and another human. And I love the Ram Dass quote of, "We are all just walking each other home," or this idea of I mean, we use the hero's journey a lot in the way that we think, and it's like, when if a new buyer called me right now and I got on a Zoom call with them after we recorded this podcast, I literally am looking across the Zoom, or across the table to coffee shop, and I'm like, here's somebody on, like, this, they're on their journey. Like, how do I just like be with them on this journey right now? And now the incidentals of like where the journey takes them, and how long I'm on that journey with them, and do I get paid on that journey or not paid? Like that's all little secondary to just like, how can I add value in this moment and the next and the next and the next.
One of the things, I mean, I keep trying to make fun of real estate a little bit,
You
but
should.
yeah, and I think one of the reasons I do that is because I haven't done it myself. So I'm like, no, like, why are all these people making money and they're not doing anything? Obviously, that's not true. I wanted to mention that it seems, and the joke I was going to make is the only people that get into real estate are ones who don't get the right major in college. But looking at your background and what you studied, it looks like, and kind of what you were saying, is you found real estate as a vehicle for impact based on what you studied and based on what your beliefs are. And ultimately, it sounds like the impact you're trying to make is help couples and families have a better life. I'm curious as to what is the biggest challenge or obstacle for those couples in order to have a bit better life.
Wow. Okay. We just my brain was on real estate there for a second. I'm like, I really should probably like promote the industry and like say some positive things. So make sure we come back there. And now back to the question of what are the challenges for couples having a better life? So if I forget how this statement goes, right? But like, if we imagine that the quality of our life is based on the quality of our relationships, right? I think we could look around and be like, I mean, quality of our relationships impacts the quality of our life. And then, so then what controls the quality of our relationships? And it seems like it's the quality of our conversations. Like, I don't know about you guys, like most of the quality of the relationship that I have with my best people, my spouse, my people in business, whatever it is, it's this series of conversations that happen, right? So when we realize just a string of how many powerful conversations do you have with people that matter to you, and what controls the quality of conversations is the quality of questions, right? So when I think about relationships that are on this trajectory that it feels like they're going in the right direction, and ones that don't, you can almost just look at as a microcosm, how are the conversations going? What conversations are missing? what
Mm.
what topics are they, have they just said like, we don't talk about that? I don't, you guys, we got young kids and young daughters at that, so the movie Encanto, I don't know if you guys remember that one, but there's
We
this
don't talk
character
about
in the
Bruno.
movie called Bruno. We don't talk about Bruno, right? And it's like, inside of any relationship, where's Bruno? Who's Bruno? Who is, what do you not talk about that if you did, and if you could have a powerful conversation, and by powerful, I don't mean might, I just mean like breakthrough, that like, what if there could be a new possibility that you could reinvent, and then on the other side of this, things feel new, and things feel fresh, and things feel like they were created with ease. So all that we try and do now is, how do we cultivate environments for those conversations to flow and to happen with ease, and to do it in a way that helps couples feel psychological safety, that we're not alone. There's a guy named C.S. Lewis, who wrote The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. He wrote a whole bunch of other stuff too, but that'd be one that some might recognize. And he has this quote that says this. My wife quotes it all the time: "Friendship begins the moment that one says to another, 'You too? I thought I was the only one.'" And friendship in couples, friendship in business partners begins the moment you look at each other, you're like, "You too? I thought I was the only one." I mean, think of the businesses that are formed, think of the friendships that deepen when you have those kinds of moments with people, and those happen in conversations.
Okay. Yet again, so many places to go. One of the things that immediately stood out is having the Bruno conversations. So let's bring it back to marketing for a second. Seth, you gave me a landing page that I still need to evaluate, or I think it's a webinar or a landing page. I need to check it out. You gave me something to
Probably both
evaluate,
by now. Yeah.
something, yeah, and I need to give it back to you. But what you were asking for, this is marketing, because I'm in marketing. You're asking me, hey, what do you think about this from a marketing perspective? As a rule in marketing, Dimitri knows this, we need to get feedback, real life feedback on things to see if they're good or not. And if you want the truth, for example, Seth, if you're wanting me to give you the truth, right, then you cannot react poorly to it. As marketers, if we want the truth about our product, our landing page, or whatever it is, once we get it, we can't act poorly to that answer. And so in this case with you, when you have those Bruno conversations, my wife comes to me and gives me some real shit. Advice do you give to where the couple doesn't act poorly to what's said so that we can get Bruno in the room?
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because I guess we could talk about like what does teamwork look like, and how as a couple do you do this, and then what the three of us all share in common is, we'll get in a room full of guys, front row dads, and we'll be like, what if it was just up to you? Not in an arrogant way, just like, what if the buck stops right here? Extreme ownership. What if you had to take 100% responsibility? Well, I can't control how she's going to react, right? What if you took 100% responsibility? And so in that sense, it's kind of easier to just look at one person. And it's like, am I receptive? Am I creating safety where somebody feels like they're able to give me feedback? I think of a couple ideas on that, and then the second one is, will I also at the same time, as much as responsibility as I'll take for receiving the feedback, will I not push that on them for them receiving the feedback? In other words, will I take responsibility for how feedback is delivered? Right. And that's the hard part, because you're literally talking out of both sides of your mouth with that statement, right? Like, well, who is it? Who's responsible for how stuff is received? Is it the person receiving it? Well, if you want to be responsible in life, which, guys, at our best moments we are, and at our worst moments we all suck at it, then we take responsibility for both sides of it. We take responsibility for how our words land, the wake that we leave, and we take responsibility for being kind of this blank slate on how we receive it. So on a practical level, I'm learning to be more attuned to myself, with just this idea of, I don't know where the phrase comes from, but just like being regulated or dysregulated. I'm learning to listen and notice my own nervous system a lot more. I feel a slight amount of like shame that I'm like 46, and I feel like I'm just noticing things in my nervous system. Shouldn't I have been taught this at 20? Think of how many relationships I've injured because I'm still at conscious incompetence on a lot of this stuff, right? So the first thing that I'm learning is to speak out loud, or at least in my head, of like, I'm dysregulated, right? And I'm literally like, I'll be in a conversation, I'll feel myself clench up, and I'm like, this has nothing to do with them. Why would I be clenched up? Nobody's about to. I'm not going to get hit. This isn't right. And it's like, I'm not breathing, and I'm just in a business conversation, right? I mean, I was in a conversation with an agent last night, and we're arguing over a dishwasher, right? We're arguing over a dish. No, it's stupider than that. We're arguing over a old Pioneer receiver in a basement connected to a really mediocre home theater system that this guy's like, we're going to blow up the deal if they don't leave that.
Oh my God.
And I'm like, I don't work at Best Buy. How are we having this conversation? But what I notice in myself is I'm triggered. I'm triggered. And if I can't take a moment and just own that experience, then I lose sight of everything else.
Let me add one more point. This is yet another example of Seth being just in the moment, accepting it for what it is, or being cognizant of what's going on. And again, as simple as it sounds, you said it going back to the beginning of this conversation, I think that's the highest level, right? Be, do, have. To be is hard, but it's powerful when you do it, and you're explaining why.
Yeah, I think that we all have our challenges with these learning. And I mean, like you mentioned, you learned something like, man, these relationships I hurt earlier in my life. And I don't know about you guys, but every time I learn something new, I'm like, oh, everyone probably already knows this. I've just been behind, and I'm catching up. Why am I so far behind? But this is really cool that you're creating, I mean, through real estate, ultimately moving into a program for entrepreneurial couples to build success financially, build success in their personal lives. How does this impact? I mean, I'm really trying to figure out how you are able to do it with your spouse. How are you able to navigate that? I mean, a lot of times, it's external, but how do you do it?
Yeah. We were on a Zoom call with a group 2 nights ago, and Alice and I were fighting before the Zoom call, right? And so much to the point that she's like, I need a break from you. So I get on the Zoom call, and we're just like in that kind of like pre Zoom conversation. But by the time she walks in the office, she walks in here and she's and so we haven't actually seen each other. Right? So understand, we're live and we haven't made up yet. This is real, guys. This is real. We all do this with our kids. We might do this in a business if you run a business together. And isn't there this hard balance of like being inauthentic and like, I don't want to wear a mask. Like, hey, if we're not doing well, let's just say we're not doing well. And then at the same time, we understand that there's some responsibility of like, kind of, I'll say something like not fighting around the kids, which I'm not saying that I necessarily agree with that. I'm just saying context matters. So So I give her a hug. I said, would you like a hug? Oh, can I give you a hug? Yes. I give her a hug, and then I turn to the Zoom. I'm like, are we the only couple that has ever had a fight right before Zoom call? And the company you're talking to said we just had that happen, and they're actually in the marketing space too. And they go, we just had that happen. Literally, we're in the middle of a fight. We're like, we have got to pause this long enough to like do this pitch for this product that we're doing in an hour, right? And they literally went from now. This is a skill, and by the way, I'm gonna pull this back to real estate in a second. Guys, there is a book by Becky Kennedy. There you go. Good Inside. Becky Kennedy. Awesome book. If you're a parent, grab the book. If you're not a parent, grab the book. And I think it's awesome. Here's why. She talks about this idea of two things are true. She says, resist as a parent when a child says to you, I'm sad. Resist trying to take this one emotion and like somehow changing it, right? But he said people that are well established in life have this ability to hold two things at the same time. And the more that we grow up, the more we can hold two things can be true.
Wow.
So what's true? We're fighting right now. What's also true? We're getting on a webinar right now to be a powerful couple. Now, how can we hold those two things in tension and not fall off on either side? And falling off on one side would be like, okay, fine, let's just make a life where we just put on a face. I don't know a couple out there that has not had those types of moments. Let's just, I remember having a fight one time with a team member, and they go, I wish I never brought it up. Nah, that's not. That's what a sad place if that's how we got to, right? That'd be the Bruno life, right? Just wish I never, just don't go there. Just don't talk about that. But this idea of like, how do you hold things in tension? Chris, my experience with like, how do you make it work as a couple is not trying to fix stuff too quick. Right? Because otherwise you're 2 minutes before a Zoom call, like, all right, what do you need? An apology? Fine, I'm sorry. Okay. And now you get on a Zoom. Nah, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay for it to be like two things are true. We're a family and we need to go in and have family dinner right now. And we're going to be our best for the kids. Or we're going to be our best for a podcast. We're going to be our best in front of a client. And that doesn't mean that we diluted this. It doesn't mean we glossed over. It doesn't mean we forgot about it. This conversation can still have weight. And by the way, I can love you and be totally annoyed at you at the same time. Two things are true. So in that sense, how do I, if it's all right, let me jump back to real estate. And Dimitri, I'd love for you to share a little bit more when you're like, I've got kind of this weird opinion, not weird, not the word you use, but this opinion of real estate agents, like they don't really do much. This is what makes this industry so crazy. It is an industry that is dramatically overpaid and dramatically underpaid. It's really hard. It's really hard in that capacity. And I'm talking at the level of like keeping emotionally regulated. I remember so when I first started as a CPA, I remember my salary was like give or take $52,000 if I'm remembering right. This back in around 2001, 2, somewhere in there. I remember being in real estate in a day where we had a couple transactions, so domino transactions, right? So and so needs to sell this house to buy their next one, and then that, and so there's domino transactions, and something happened, and I'm like, Alice, I just lost. I forget if it was a half a year's or a full year's. I just lost a half a year's salary. Like, I'm like, I can't even understand how I'm processing that right now. That like what would have been the equivalent of like a half a year's salary just gone in like one conversation. Right. And so the struggle with anybody who might be listening to this and like they're pursuing different careers, real estate is one of those where the you don't know when to celebrate and when to be concerned, because there's the you talk about like not being I never thought I was superstitious until I got into real estate. And even now,
Mhm.
I'm the guy that's like, oh, don't take the sign out of the yard until it settles.
Mm.
Well, yeah, it's settling today. No, no, wait till after it settles. Right? I mean, like, just wait till after everything,
Mhm.
because you want it. You in any business, you need to learn how to celebrate micro moments. The problem is when you don't get paid in those micro moments,
Mhm.
right? So you've got to actually find a way to like get this like emotional, like, how do you build momentum? I mean, I've got a team member that I'm having a call with as soon as we finish, and she recruits. So what do you need to celebrate when you recruit agents to a brokerage? Celebrate the good conversations. Well, they haven't come yet. But if you're going to build any business, you've got to be able to learn how to like celebrate in stages, even if those aren't when the payoffs happen. And it creates this whole need for this massive amount of faith. But anybody that you know that is in real estate or thinking about getting into it, I've never seen an industry create so much opportunity for emotional resilience to be built in
Mhm.
somebody.
I hear that. I was actually an ice hockey referee for 10 years, and I know a thing or two about emotional resilience through that industry as well. So I can imagine it being a real estate agent is pretty tough. Now, I will say, like, that comment is tongue in cheek. Shout out to my real estate agent who helped my family find our dream home. I mean, she helped us. We weren't even interested in this property. She insisted on it. Like, she did all these things, helped us with the deal and the contract. There's a lot that they can do. But, on the other hand, my wife has that show on Netflix. I think it's Selling Sunset, and they're like, here's the bathroom and here's the living room. I could do that. I could definitely
Yeah, yeah.
tell which room is which. I kind of make fun of them. I want to
Totally.
also go back to the. You just kind of blew my mind a little bit with the, because I've been trying to answer the following question for years. What is an adult? And I haven't. I've had good answer. Adult is someone who's over 18. Adult is someone who provides for themselves and their family, whatever. And I think I just got the answer to my question. An adult is someone who can hold two con-
Hmm.
contradictory truths in their mind at the same time. Like the example you mentioned, where it's you have a micro argument, but you're macro happy. Like you're micro mad and macro happy. So that
Yeah.
just blew my mind.
It, you could, how many randomly different topics should we go to here? Um, Guys, a lot of the world cannot hold two political truths at the same time, right?
Yes,
The moment, I mean, it's called a paradox. It is not called a decision of which feels more true, less true, right? It's called a paradox for a reason. Um, and I have found that the more that I am black and white in my um, oh, here's a moment. So Alice and I are on an airplane in 2018. We've been married 18 years at this point. And darkest moment, darkest season of our marriage started for me, maybe not the darkest season for her. For me, it started. This was the opening credits to the darkest scene, because she looks over at me and she said, "I'm looking back on the last 18 years of our marriage, and I realize I never really said yes to you. I just didn't say no."
Whew.
Damn.
Um, hard as a man. I mean, there's a man in the arena moment, right?
Oh
How
man,
do you
that's
process
real.
that and take responsibility for it, as a way to own? Um, so hard moment. And what did I want at the end of that? I wanted certainty, right? So she says, I didn't say yes, I just didn't say no, right? And what am I craving in our relationship after that moment? Well, so what are you saying now? Are you in now? Are you in or are you out? Um, that's my need for certainty, my unwillingness to take into account um, the paradox of conflicting emotions, right? And by the way, I'm very humbled and grateful to be able to tell you guys, on the other side of that valley has been a beautiful peak.
Good.
And I am not unaware that that is the last peak and valley that I'm going to go through in my life. Probably not the last peak and valley that Alice and I are going to go through together. But my ability to hold intention in paradox, the idea of this is how I feel. What are you still in? We're in this. We're figuring this out, and I'm not going to pull that punch. Like, yeah, our relationship is better because we were able to hold those things in paradox. Intention.
This has been like the fastest podcast that I feel we've had in a while, Dimitri. I looked up and I'm
I
like,
agree.
damn, it's already been good. Gosh. Um, Let me ask this question then, Seth. Knowing you, it is quite evident that again you be and you're a man of wisdom, and I love talking to you. Love talking to you.
Mm.
Love it. Now here you are spouting all this wisdom and shit. Now, when you talk to your kids or you try to pass these lessons on to your kids, let me backtrack before I ask the question. By the way, Seth is very intentional with his kids. If he we could do a whole nother podcast about what his girls are doing, what they're up to. That'd be a whole another podcast. But when we try to give our kids this, what you're giving on the podcast, they're often resistant. They're resistant simply because you're their dad. How do you pass wisdom on to your kids in a manner that is palatable to them?
Um, so when we use the word give, right? How do we give to our kids? The first thing, it's funny, it's kind of become the through line a little bit of our talk, maybe just serendipitously. Go back to be, do, have. And I think every parent wants to pass through character traits. And sometimes, in the lack of knowing how to pass through something at the level of being, we pass through doing or giving, or I'm sorry, doing or having, right? So when we talk about what do we want to give our kids, like the first thing that comes up to me is like, what do I want to give them? Money? Like that'd be a have. They would then have money, but just because they have money doesn't mean that they would do something like, like be a hard worker. That would maybe be at the level of doing, or it wouldn't mean that they would be generous, right? So I, my sense is if I can at any given point in time think about how I'm raising our kids and try to isolate how would this be sorted out at the level of being, doing, and having. And if it's possible, try to move from the having to the doing and the doing to the being. That might be such an esoteric answer. Um, Practically, I love the way Tony Robbins talks about resources and resourcefulness. Um, my whole goal in where my kids are now, kind of teenagers on up, and this is only because I wish I was more intentional when they were even younger, but this is where they are, so this is where I am. But my whole goal is how to create resourceful anchors inside of their memories. Um, when they all hit about age 11, 12, 13, 14. So I have four daughters now between ages 12 and 21.
Girl
When they
dad.
hit 15, I started, and then it kind of got progressively younger down to where the youngest one I took her at age 11 last year. I take him to Tony Robbins and we go walk on fire. And one of my favorite moments was when I took my oldest, and she was scared to death walking across fire, and it's a whole surreal experience. If you know, you know. And when she finished it and she came out, because I wasn't even able to actually be with her, they actually separated us. That's a whole different story. When I saw her after she did it, you can just imagine. I mean, her countenance was just right. I mean, there's a 15-year-old girl. She just walked on effing fire, right?
Hmm.
And she came up to me, and I remember giving her a hug, and I put my hand on her chest, and I said, I want you to feel that. That's what courage feels like. What right now in your body, what you're feeling right now, that's courage. And I just wanted to anchor in for her
Hmm.
something at the level of being, right? That you can go back to at any point in time. You can go back to, what does courage feel like? I care way more about that than how many countries they've been to, or how many lots of great experiences to give our kids. But the one that mattered to me was an experience that would become for her a resourceful anchor later in life around a character trait that I thought would serve her. I think courage will serve her more than a 529. That's the bet I'm making.
Wow. That's powerful. And you know what? This is exactly what I suspected would happen when we were first getting started with this conversation before we went live. Is I knew you were a marketer. I knew it. I knew it. You have marketing in your bones because it's all just disguised as it's marketing disguised, and you're passing on lessons, you're anchoring, you're showing people the way. I mean, that's what marketing is. Sure, direct response is the thing that you do online and you get a click and a conversion, blah blah blah. But ultimately, what are we trying to get? We're trying to create impact, and we're trying to make somebody do something. You know, bad marketing, getting them to do something bad, but good marketing get someone to do something good. And that's exactly
Mm-hmm.
what you're doing in your business and in your family.
Thank you. That's awesome, and it makes me want to learn more for sure.
Chris.
I think, again, where I want to go, we don't have time for it, but I do want to piggyback on what Dimitri said about good marketing. I think that, who is it? Our guy Perry always says, good marketing is somebody who's able to disguise the sell, right? And so, on
That's right.
Dimitri's point, you could do something bad and get people to do stuff and whatever for you. But in the story that you did with your daughter, it's an excellent example of disguising the sell to me, because you wanted her to know what courage feels like, and you anchored it to her, and she in the moment, um, at that age, may not be able to process what you did years later, right? When she's 20 something, 30 something, 40 something, she'll know how important that moment was. And that was because you were able to make an impact, because of the way you presented the cell, if that makes any sense at all. And so
Well,
back to Dimitri's points. Yeah.
yeah, I think the other thing I'm realizing from what you guys are saying is there's certain times in life that we think that we're like giving to somebody else, whether it's stuff or knowledge or anything else, like we're giving it to them. And then there's other experiences where we realize what we're trying to like awaken in somebody else, right? Like we actually think this is a phrase inside of neuro linguistic programming is like there's this core belief that people are whole and complete the way they are, right? And what you're doing is more awakening something inside of them. Or in this case, I wasn't giving my daughter courage. It welled up from within her. It was her
Yep.
courage. All I was doing is helping her identify. It's probably like I'm not going to be nearly the Star Wars fan that somebody will be on here, but it's like it's like the force is in there and it just gets awakened and it gets pulled out of somebody, but it was always in there. And my guess is that marketing is a little bit like that of and that's how altruistic marketing becomes a thing. It's probably also how negative marketing does it as well, but it's like you're pulling out stuff that was already in there, just having people see a path to connect it.
That reminds me of the study I've been doing in health and genetics, which is everyone is given a certain set of genetics, but each gene to some extent can be activated or deactivated based on the actions that you take or even the thoughts that you think. And it seems like that's what's happening. Everyone has it, but it needs to be activated. And yeah, and that's what marketing is. We're trying to go into that deep psyche and activate certain things, and so people can take action, hopefully for their benefit.
One more thing I'd like to say is I just love what both you guys had to say. I was telling Dimitri prior to you getting on, Seth, how um, things in my household have changed lately, and they I am doing a lot of the stuff. You can even say tactically, I'm doing a lot of the stuff that I've always done. What has changed is the state from where I do it from, if that makes any sense at all.
Yeah.
And that state is one of I already have everything I want. Um, I realize that happiness is already here. Everything I want is all. I realized that. So again, back to what you're saying, and what Dimitri said, I just love that. We all have, we want this, we want that, or we want to be happier and blah, 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 but it's here. You just gotta, it's there. It's right there. You just got to see it. You got to realize it.
Yeah, it feels like it's so much more of a powerful way to live. There's a book I read recently, guys, called Sage, and it's about discovering the second half of a man's life. Um, right, like kind of this idea of like there's a bunch of old people, but there's few wise sages out there, and it feels like the older we get, right? If I'm talking to you guys and any others that are listening in that would relate to that, um, we are so much more powerful when we live from this place of being. And the doing and the having still happens, but it doesn't come from that place. It feels like it comes from the core out, and it's a better way to live. I don't know if it happens over time. I feel like I'm entering that season, and I'm grateful for it.
Seth, we'd love to hear, what are these programs called? What website can people come and sign up or reach you, talk to you? Where can they find you?
Yeah, so realignedcouples.com is where we currently have the iteration of this. It's funny when you guys talk about like I think of marketing as a very creative process, and so when I say, man, I don't feel like I'm a marketer, it's often from that place of like, oh my gosh, this feels messy. And when I hear other marketers be like, yeah, you're just iterating, you're just figuring it out, and I feel like we're at that stage right now, finding out like, do the things that resonate with Alice and I and the challenges that we've had in our relationship, do those resonate with others? And so we've started to build out a community of couples that want to have conversations, and then figuring out like, what does it look like to gather more intentionally together? And so we're building out kind of different levels of intentionality inside of that. But realignedcouples.com, find us there and reach out to us. You can hit me up at Seth@realignedcouples.com, or Seth Dailey anywhere that social media stuff is, Dailey.
All right, realignedcouples.com. Seth Dailey, what a pleasure it was to have this conversation. That was incredible.
Guys, thank you.
Thank you, man.
All right, bye.
Peace.